Patrick Mahomes continues to cement himself as one of the greatest quarterbacks the game has ever seen. But what year did he actually stamp his ticket into that conversation? Was it his first Super Bowl in 2019? The moment he won his third ring, which put him in elite company? Well, for me, it was 2022. 5,250 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, capped off with an NFL MVP and a Super Bowl championship, becoming just the first player to win both awards in the same season this entire century. After this season though, in my opinion, his greatness could not be denied any longer. All this after losing
Tyreek to the Dolphins for 5 picks.
One of the greatest quarterback wide receiver duos that we had ever seen just ended right before our very eyes, as Tyreek Hill would go on to the Miami Dolphins after being traded for 5 draft picks and agreeing to a $120 million deal, making him the highest paid wideout at that time. So with Tyreek Hill gone, many wondered, would we see a drop in one of the greatest offenses we had ever seen? Well, let's just say in 2022, Patrick Mahomes was on a mission to prove one thing. Before we talk about 2022, we must recap the postseason before it. The Chiefs would lose in the AFC Championship game to Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals in a 27-24 overtime loss. A loss that stung a little bit more than others, as the Chiefs were hoping to avenge their Super Bowl loss to Tom Brady and earn the rightful title of dynasty. But with that loss to the Bengals, some believe that there were new top dogs in the AFC, and that loss potentially took away that opportunity. And with a huge question mark surrounding this team, many wondered how they would respond. Well, that question will be answered fairly quickly. In his first game of the 2022 season, Mahomes would send a statement to the entire NFL, spinning, sidearming, and floating his first touchdown of the season to none other than Travis Kelce to take an early lead over the Arizona Cardinals. And we would see this again and again. The Chiefs would score touchdowns on their first 3 drives of this game, making everything look entirely too easy, silencing the doubters before halftime. And if that wasn't good enough, Mahomes would add 2 more touchdowns to end the day, finishing with 5 touchdowns, throwing to multiple receivers with 360 yards on top of that in a 44-21 win. The following week wouldn't be as pretty, but the results would still be the same. But that was until week 3 against the Indianapolis Colts. Mahomes would have what was arguably his worst game of the season. That included a huge mistake. That interception would help seal the deal for the Indianapolis Colts upset win and deprive the Kansas City Chiefs a chance to put the game into overtime. However, it was a collective effort. There were other miscues on the behalf of the entire Chiefs squad: a muffed punt, a mixed extra point, a faked field goal attempt, another missed kick. Keep in mind that backup kicker Matt Amendola was released shortly after this game. We also have an unsportsmanlike penalty against Chris Jones that would help extend the game-winning drive. And I could go on, but I'll stop. However, the weirdest stat that came away from this game was the fact that Mahomes is 26-2 against teams that have scored less than 26 points. Both losses were to the Indianapolis Colts. In his next 2 games, Mahomes would revive all hope for the media and fans alike. A 41-39 win over the Buccaneers, a 30-29 win over the Las Vegas Raiders after throwing the game-winning touchdown, which was his 4th touchdown of that game alone, totaling 541 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 1 interception over that 2-game span to bring the Chiefs to a respectable 4-1. This was until they matched up with the Buffalo Bills in a playoff rematch from the year before, a matchup that was anticipated by everyone after a rule-changing game that many called the game of the year. And even though the Bills failed to win that game last year, they would finally get their revenge. Mahomes would do everything he could to pull out the win, buying time for a touchdown, staying in the pocket while throwing dimes. But on this day, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills could not and would not be denied. The fella hurdled over Justin Reed, they were not about to take another L to the Kansas City Chiefs. A drive, he finished off with a dime to Dawson Knox for the 24-20 win. The game ended on a Mahomes interception, the second of the day, and although he had 338 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, Josh Allen would take the rematch with 329 passing yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, when you lose a game, it's never a good feeling. That's a great football team. Thought we played some good football. We just made too many mistakes at the end of the day. When you make mistakes against another great football team, you lose football games.
But if there was one thing that has been consistent with the Kansas City Chiefs for the entirety of their run as a great football team, it's the fact that they know how to respond after a loss. They will go on a 5-game win streak after that loss to the Buffalo Bills, and Patrick Mahomes would continue to put on an absolute show. A season-high 446 yards against the Tennessee Titans. The following week, he would have his second 4-touchdown game of the year against the Jacksonville Jaguars, throwing a dime for a hopscotch touchdown, a hook shot to Vandale Scanley, a floater to Noah Gray, and one more touchdown to get Travis Kelce involved. Mahomes was distributing the ball around the field, and everyone was getting involved in the offense over that span, and the following 2 weeks would be no different. As the win streak continued, Mahomes would not throw for less than 320 yards during that stretch. He added 12 touchdowns on top of that, and with that win streak, the Kansas City Chiefs sat at a respectable 9-2, and with another playoff rematch on the horizon, they will match up once again with the team that ended their season last year, the Cincinnati Bengals. Choosing between the Buffalo Bills or the Bengals as the most anticipated matchup for the Kansas City Chiefs will be a coin flip. But what we do know is neither game would be a disappointment. With the Bengals jumping out to an early 14-3 lead, this was until Mahomes threw a 2-yard touchdown pass to Jerick McKinnon, and now your ball game is 10-14. Kansas City kept the momentum to eventually take a 17-14 lead, then a 24-17 lead capped off by a Mahomes run. But Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals would not be denied as he throws the game-sealing touchdown to Chris Evans with 8 minutes left in the ballgame. The Bengals defense showed up to stop any Mahomes magic on that day, and this missed field goal would seal the fate for the Kansas City Chiefs. 223 yards, 1 passing touchdown, and a rushing touchdown for Mahomes, 286 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 1 rushing touchdown for Burrow, which helped the Cincinnati Bengals get the last laugh in the regular season. But the playoffs, well, that would be a different story. And in good old Kansas City fashion, the Chiefs would continue to come back strong after a loss, once again winning 5 straight. And in those games, Mahomes would once again put on an absolute clinic. 352 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Denver Broncos, another 336 yards with 2 touchdowns against the Houston Texans, 224 and 2 touchdowns against the Seattle Seahawks, 328 against the Broncos before throwing his lowest total of the season, which was 202 against the Las Vegas Raiders, albeit they won 31-13. Mahomes would end the season with 5,250 passing yards, 41 touchdowns to only 12 interceptions, capping the season off with the NFL MVP. But with the regular season over, it was finally time for the games that would define a legacy. The game started off with Mahomes dicing up the Jags defense, making plays while being tackled, as they would make the first score of the game look absolutely too easy. So initially, it did not look good for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but they would soon answer. Then I asked myself a question that I seem to always have as I have watched the Chiefs over my many years. How does this man continue to be this wide open? The Chiefs would take a 17-7 lead, but the Jags would not simply go away until this touchdown in the fourth quarter to Vandale Scanley. The Chiefs would then go up 17-27 after the Jaguars put up a pretty good fight. Mahomes, 22 of 30, 195 yards and 2 touchdowns, was not an explosive day, but it was a solid day. No mistakes, and he just seems to make the right play in the right moment. All this after suffering what was a pretty nasty looking ankle injury in the first quarter. And with the Jaguars eliminated, the Chiefs set their sights on a rematch from this year and the year before in the AFC Championship game against the Cincinnati Bengals. When Mahomes and Burrow play, it seems to never disappoint, and this game would be be no different. With the memories of last year's loss still embedded in the minds of the Kansas City Chiefs, this game would live up to every single moment and all the hype. It all got started with a touchdown to, wait, never mind, no it didn't. Harrison Butler would kick us off to start the game with the Chiefs up before Mahomes and Travis Kelce would score the first touchdown of the day to put the Chiefs up 13-3. T. Higgins would soon join the party with a head-top catch to tie the score up in the third quarter. This would be followed by one of the tightest window throws I've seen in a very long time. Mahomes would squeeze in a pass to Valdez-Scantling to give the Chiefs the 13-20 lead. But after a 2-yard rushing touchdown, the score would then once again be tied up. And it was at this point in the game that it was going to come down to who would make that first mistake or whoever would have the ball last. Well, for the Bengals, tragedy would strike them first. Burrow would slightly underthrow this go route, which led to a tip drill, and it was at this point I thought the Chiefs would take that momentum and get into the end zone. However, they did not. So the Bengals would get the ball back, but they wouldn't score either, which left Mahomes with around 30 seconds left on the clock. After a check down and a third and fourth push out of bounds, the game-winning field goal would be set up for your 20-23 final. Mahomes would outdo Joe Burrow, who had 270 yards and a touchdown, but added 2 interceptions on the night, with 326 yards and 2 touchdowns of his own. And despite losing 2 very anticipated games in the regular season, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs were headed right back to the Super Bowl simply because they won the games when they mattered the most. And in this year's matchup, they will face off against the red-hot Philadelphia Eagles. With a Super Bowl championship on the line and the title of Dynasty riding on this win, the Chiefs were ready for the task, matching the Eagles every step of the way in an early 14-21 ball game. But it was at this moment in the second quarter that doubt began to creep in. Mahomes would re-aggravate an ankle injury he suffered against the Jaguars before limping off the field under his own power, and the Eagles would go on to add to their lead to make the score 24-14. Going into halftime, the Chiefs would regroup though and score on their first possession of the second half to cut the score to 21-24. The Eagles would get a field goal before the Chiefs would get another touchdown on yet another 75-yard drive, with this passing touchdown to Kadarius Toney to take their first lead of the game. The special teams unit would step up and give them a short field, capped off with an easy, and I'm talking about easy, touchdown pass to Sky Moore. The Chiefs now led 35-27, but the Eagles didn't just lay down. It took one last Mahomes run on a bad ankle to finally set up the game-winning field goal after this hold by Bradbury for the Chiefs' second Super Bowl win of the Mahomes era. And although Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense played well, it was simply not enough to beat a team that was simply more complete. Mahomes ended this game 21-27, 182 yards, 3 touchdowns to cap off a 703-yard, 7-touchdown, 0 interception playoff run. And even with all of that being true, some say Mahomes and the Chiefs simply got lucky, but there is some element of luck involved in many Super Bowl wins. And at the end of the day, every single time and every single moment Mahomes was called on to make the play, he made it when it was most important. And it seemed like when the chips were pushed to the center of the table, the man made 0 mistakes in the regular season as well, but especially in this playoff run, proving that he could get it done despite losing his #1 option at wideout. And the Chiefs cemented themselves in the eyes of many as a dynasty. And for others who still doubted them, well, there's this.
He's heading back to the Super Bowl for the 4th time in 5 years. Mahomes flings it. Hardman!
He is the standard. Your Michael Jordan wins it again.